Okay, so this morning, this is Simon Nott zooms in number 25, brought to you from a seemingly haunted motel near Doncaster. I survived the first night, free to go. And with Johnny Dineen, professional punter of some renown, racing post, uh, up the ante, and all the rest of it. Johnny, nice to speak to you again. Thanks
Yeah,
for
good to
giving me
speak
the
to you,
time.
Simon. How are you?
As you can see, I'm living the dream.
Yeah,
Um, but it's still better than a proper job, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely.
Um, so how's the punting been going for you, John?
Look, not too bad. The summer has been slow for me. I'd say since the start of the summer, I'm actually probably losing since about from June till now. So June till the start of September, but not a lot. And I had a pretty decent start to the year. So look, you get runs in this game too, where you get 3 or 4 months where you're either losing or standing still, and then you can maybe take off a bit and get a bit of a spurt again. And look, it's not no road that I haven't been down before anyway. So look, you just have to wait. Hopefully that it'll turn around. But it's not like the losing that I have been doing is nowhere near disastrous now, right? Now that, but I have developed a thing lately. Well, not so much lately, but even in the latter years of this game, I find it you can win and win and win. And then you can have a really, really bad day that negates a lot of good days, which shouldn't really be the case. It should be the other way around. In fact, it should be that you can maybe you lose and lose and lose, maybe two and one. But I find it the other way now that you can be even playing careful. You can undo a lot of good work in a very short space of time in this game now. That's what I find in it. That you could win 4 or 5 days in a row and then bang you have one bad day and you lose what you plus more possibly even, you know.
That I'm assuming that's just because you've sort of really fancied one, and not because you've gone on tilt. And
No, it wouldn't be on tilt, but I suppose if in the flat, I suppose I don't have a strong an opinion, and maybe lean towards maybe laying horses a bit more than I would in the jumps. And if they start to win, like when you're laying yokes at 2-1 against and 5-2, and maybe put two or three of them together that win, like it's the same thing as betting 3-2 to 1 on losers in a row. It's going to be costly, that kind of way. So when you do get it wrong, it can lead to a fairly nasty deficit now at the end of the day. But I try. I don't do as much betting in the flat, to be honest. I do a lot of watching in the flat, and there's a lot of races that make no appeal to me, which suits actually because if you are, and every gambler, as far as I can see, has a there will be an inclination to go on tilt or to do a bit of chasing, and no matter how disciplined you are, I find that most fellas will do some level of chasing and at some description or increase their wages at the end of the day after losing. It's human nature, really, and I'm no different to anyone else. Look, so I could turn, I can turn I can turn a bad day into a really bad day in the jumps where I don't seem to have those on the flat very often because I don't do as much betting really, to be honest. I don't have as strong an opinion, and I do a lot of watching of the flat now without betting in it, and I watch it away all day long, and I might there was some of the races there making zero appeal to me, and I always think that the bookies have a much better chance on the flat than over the jumps.
okay, so obviously the jumps, by the sound of it, is your main thing. We'll get onto that in a minute. I was going to ask you. I've been looking at your Twitter. You do have a few strong opinions, which we know about the horse racing, but you do have a few opinions about football as well. Do you have a bet on that?
Try not to. I try not to. I try not to bet in any sport, but I do fall into the trap every now and then. Um, I try to keep the sports betting to the bare minimum now. I could be down to 3, 4 bets a year, and then they wouldn't necessarily be winners either. You know that kind of way because I don't know enough about it. I don't follow it closely enough, and like, I mean, I'm forming my football opinion and watching match of the day a lot of the time. You know what I mean? That kind of way. So it's you're seeing, and then one match is completely different from the next one. You look at a team one night and you say they're no use. You know what I mean? And then you bet against them and they're a different team completely the next night they're playing, and vice versa with the team they're playing could be good one night, bad. I look sports is a very fickle business. I try and I take my hat off to anyone that wins on the sport definitely wins in a sport without a card anyway, or without a mark of some description of or some sort of an edge, because it's so volatile sport. Anything can happen in sport, as far as I can see, in any sport really, and there's very little edge as far as I can see in any sport with any kind of liquidity really. So okay, if some guy comes on to when he wants to back Wigan Warriors -14 against some crowd. I mean, you want to be with those fellas at the same time. But I'm just saying that on the normal, like high end sports, I don't see much of an agent in it. So I try to keep the sports betting to a minimum because I don't know what I'm betting on really. And I only have the same opinion as a normal guy you pull off a bar counter really. So I shouldn't be betting on it. But I do fall the odd time. And it usually, well, not always, but I would win the odd one. But I wouldn't win in sport anyway, I know that much.
Now, I do appreciate you giving your time up to come on this because you'll have obviously noticed you said you do tend to get a bit of stick sometimes on social media for some of the stuff that you say. And I'm sure that there's a bit of a wry smile going on. You know that when you say it, you're going to get
Well,
people.
yeah, well, some stuff is like it's probably a hiding to nothing when you say one can't win. You know what I mean? But you kind of know that there's probably I don't know how many plenty guys waiting for this to win time. Absolutely, come piling on top of you. So there's a little extra there's a little extra pressure on one of those if you say, "Oh, I think this cannot win." You know what I mean? Win then. Like I have got, I did get one, definitely one wrong last year in Ascot where I thought a horse couldn't win, and it did win. A horse belonged to Keane, Jerry Keane, and Colin Keane rode it in Ascot. It was around a 7-1, but it went out to big price now. I much to be honest, but I didn't give that a prayer, and it did win. But a lot of the time I have been actually right when I said they haven't won. But I do know that you're only one race away from getting it wrong, and if like usually what you'll have is if you do get it right, you'll have two or three fellas saying well done, and then but if you get it wrong, you'll have 500 fellas saying mug or clueless or whatever. You know what I mean? This kind of stuff. So you'd be kind of half hoping they wouldn't get it. But even if it did get it wrong, look, I can take the beltings off of those lads too. It don't bother me really, you know.
Now, the one that I really did enjoy, and having interviewed enough professional punters to know that this would probably get loads of people talking. You said that what you don't like is when somebody says there'd be a backer at 3-1, there'd be a layer at 2-1. Either you fancy the horse or you don't. And then
Yeah,
that got all sorts of,
yeah,
and
I'm a
you
firm
get people
believer
saying,
in that stuff now. I mean, to me, there are horses that okay, they're there could be 16 or 20 to 1 shots. To me, they have no price. They have zero price. There isn't a price that you could put on them that actually would tempt me to back them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there are horses there that you see it and you say, like, would I back it at 6-1? I wouldn't. Would I back it at 8-1? I wouldn't even. You know what I mean? I'm not interested in backing that horse. I don't think it'll win. And I know for this, some guys go by price only, and they say, okay, I can understand if like there was a horse there yesterday now in Cork, for example. I thought it might win, but it went to a price that I didn't back it. It just went a bit too short. It went under evens, hell or high water. It did win, no, I didn't back it. Now I can see that point of view, all right, for sure. But I can see the situation where you fancy the favourite or something in a race, and the next thing the second favourite goes from 4-1 to 7-1, and you say, "Oh, you have to be with that at 7-1. It couldn't be 7-1. It's probably 7-1 for a reason at the same time. You know what I mean? I always think of that too. That you must think of that. Why did a horse go from say 7-2 out to 6-1? It's probably because it's miswork and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's somebody knows something about it, and that's why they're offering it 6-1. And there's the oldest, I always find it the oldest sayings are the best sayings, and they through thick and thin and time. Any time frame or whatever, they'll always be true. And one of those is when something's too good to be true, it's because it usually is. When it looks too good, it's too good to be true, and you can apply that to a lot of betting markets and horses. When somebody is willing to give you 5 to 1 about a horse that should be 2 to 1. You have to be take that on board and be worried. That's my reading of it anyway. But I never get the idea of fellas coming up with their own prices and price this horse 2 to 1 and will say, well, I'll be a layer at 6 to 4, but I'm a backer at 5 to 2. That to me is a load of pony anyway.
Right. Now, the biggest gamblers in horse racing aren't people like you, are they? It's the breeding and the bloodstock sort of side of things. Now, tell us a bit about Temple Bloodstock. I see on your profile you're involved with that.
I look. I just took a little share in a horse when Aubrey McMahon. He's a good young lad, and I'm friendly with his dad with donkey's years, and he was starting out at this, and they bought a horse off the flat in France, and he wasn't a deer horse by any stretch of the imagination, now and I just took a little share. I'd never been involved in a syndicate before, and usually the horses that I've been involved with, it's been partnership, two people in it, not 20, like that kind of way. So I said, look, I'll take a little. It wasn't the end of the world, but I must say, now prior to that, I wouldn't have been interested in any kind of that syndicate stuff with 20 horses and you see these what micro shares and all this with 4,000 and that wouldn't really appeal to me. But I enjoyed it. No, I actually didn't back the horse that often. Know that he did a few days he won, but he has been a good spinner, money spinner, and he's quite a solid horse on the flat as well as over jumps, and he's a good fun horse, and I must say I did get a lot more enjoyment out of it in than I thought, and I think they're coming up with a new one from similar scenario from France very shortly, and I was only going to get involved in one, but I might take a share in this guy coming up as well. He's buying a similar type of French flat horse, something around the same kind of money. It's not huge money or anything like that, but I think I'll throw my hat into that one as well. So, but up to that point, I'd have had no interest in the syndicates as such. But it was only it's gone into like it wasn't the horse that should be. It got into Willie Mullins's. It was going to be running on its merits every single day. It was one of those. It wasn't the horse that you'd be tricking with. It's a fun horse really, and it wasn't a huge amount of money. So I'd give it a go, and I think I'll give it another go now. I think the one that's coming up soon. I think I'll take a leg in that too.
Is this just adding to your enjoyment, or are you actually looking to make money out of these sort of things?
Yeah, I'm like the horses that I've had all my life, or shares in them, or half shares in them. They were more a punting tool, if you know what I'm saying, or a potential punting tool. Whereas this is more of a hobby, fun horse as such. Like you know what I mean. We have no input really into where he's going around. Aubrey does all that stuff, and he does it well, does it very well. So, whereas if you had a horse with someone and you'd be kind of saying we'd maybe plot our way to some route to maybe someday actually have maybe if he was good enough to back him, no, you know what I mean? But that's very important too that they have to be good enough to back. And the big thing I think with horse racing ownership is like it isn't cheap if you're doing it even a half share it can be expensive. But like if the warning signs are there, you have to pull the plug on the meter immediately anyway, as far as I can. There's no point in dwelling on or sticking with a horse that's very unlikely to ever trouble the judge properly, or even if he does trouble the judge, it'll be 3 years down the line in a knob race somewhere. You know what I mean? That kind of way. Where he's not ever, you're never going to be able to back him. So the minute I think that you realise that you've got to be realistic and look at things and say, look, this guy isn't what we want. So we'd move him on and try again with something else.
Okay, now the jump season. How soon do you get involved with backing?
I bet every day of the week. Every single day. I love betting. Like I mean, it keeps me going. Like betting, I love betting. I've loved it all my life, and that's not going to change in the near future. And okay, in the latter years, gambling is like half a taboo subject, isn't it? Like really, do you know what I mean? It's starting to get frowned upon and all that. But one like I remember one time, maybe say 10, 15 years ago, people would look at you, and if they thought you could make money out of gambling, there was probably a small level of admiration for you. But nowadays, if people think, oh, gambling, they say, oh, like the borderline criminal stuff. You know what I mean? It must be some sort of a shady character or a dodger. There is that element in gone into in with gambling in society, as far as I can see. That it's very much frowned upon by in a lot of sectors now, and that's been a big issue I think for with all these things that are coming into and making the game harder and making and it's I'd say a lot of people in up high in governments and that they don't care about gambling or they'd sooner have no one betting if they could get away with it.
Is that the same even in Ireland then? Because I assume that
But
Ireland isn't.
I think what happens in other countries filters through to Ireland eventually. Everything will follow down 5 years later. Like there was the gambling commission that started in England has eventually followed a similar type of thing has started. Like even LED boards, the English guys had them first, then the Irish guys saw them and they got them. You know what I mean? Then the English guys got better LED boards. The Irish guys got them. The English guys got the HODs. The Irish guys got. You know, everything will filter through the really suave and sophisticated betting shops. Probably started in Britain. A few of them in around Mayfair and them places. Then Irish guys cottoned onto that, and nearly every second shop was something like that. So, I do think that what happens in like England and maybe even in things like America, places like America, will eventually will come into our like the notion that like when I was making the book, nobody had like three pictures, two pictures, five pictures, all that kind of stuff. So, but as far as I can see now, I mean, I don't go to races much anymore, but you hear of fellas saying there was 20 bookies, but there was only six individual people. There was maybe some of them had four and five pictures there, that kind of thing. So that's a new thing that's coming to relatively new to Ireland, and that started in Britain. So all these things will come to our doorstep at some stage anyway. If you can see them in England, they're on the way to us.
Do you think there's a racing strike on the way to you as well? Would it make any difference? How many days would it take to make a difference to you if there was a racing strike in Ireland?
Yeah, I mean, I did the racing strike to me yesterday. I mean, I'm not into politics or anything like that, but I don't know, did it make any difference really? I just said that the difference was, I just said that the impact was negligible on you myself. I'd say there's guys there that are like going to be ultimately pulling the strings there and making them decisions are saying there's a few racing lads out there with banners like and with jockeys with white tops to them and they're saying they're having a laugh inside saying sure we'll go down for our lunch anyway somewhere posh and we'll have a nice little bit of wine and that and we don't really care who's outside the gate. They'll be gone in the morning anyway, it makes no difference. I had a feeling that was a load and the fact that they rescheduled the meetings like I think made the impact even less because okay they had no racing yesterday but the meetings if they were going to do anything they should have just said abandoned the four of them but they put them on other days so there's virtually no negligible like impact of any description as far as I can see.
Now, while we get to the end of it, John, 'cause I know you're a busy man, but we've got mutual friends that you sort of you're all tricky dickies, well, clever
Yeah.
punters, and you manage to still get on. Is it getting to the point where it's almost hardly worth it, or are you still all right for the foreseeable future using your various networks?
um yeah, look, it's getting tight. It is. It's getting tighter, but but um, there's always an edge and there's always a little avenue and there's always you kind of have to evolve as time goes on. Probably bet a lot differently now than I did years ago, and it's definitely harder, and it's definitely harder to get on the units that you might want to get on. But I mean I don't know how to do. I wouldn't know be capable of doing anything else at this stage. Like I'm mid 50s, so I mean where am I going to go? You know what I mean, that kind of way. And if I could get another 5 or 6 years out of it, I'd be happy enough. But will I get that long? I wouldn't be so sure. I mean, because the changes are pretty stark in the last even in the last 5 years, and like all my betting is probably done through intermediaries. Which isn't probably supposed to be what you're supposed to be doing, but still, it's the best way for me to operate. And But I do still think there are little edges, and but the thing, the big problem now is getting people that are allowed to put money in. I mean, you're not allowed to put money into a lot of these accounts. I mean, some of the guys that I have are allowed the money that they're putting now is like I was having more on horses when I was 14 years of age. You know what I mean? And this is for the month. They're allowed to put in so much, allowed to put in. I know fellas that have plenty of money, and they're allowed to put in. So the bottom line is they're at a stage. A lot of these guys are at a stage where they're not going to bother. I mean, if you're allowed to put in £500 a month into an account, and you want to bet, and the 500 goes, you can't bet till the next month. Sure, like nobody is going to stand for that kind of stuff. I mean, isn't that similar to you walking into a pub and your man's saying you could have 2 pints tonight and you have to come back next month for that's your quota for the month. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, you're not going to say, well, you're going to say, look, I'm going to sack that off. I'm not interested in having 2 pints. I want to have 10 pints tonight and I'll have another 10 in 3 weeks' time if I want them. Do you know what I mean? If that kind of level of dictatorship to people that they can only like, I know guys that have bombs of money and they're not allowed bet, and um they're looking for these kind of P45s and what's your wage, but some of these guys are semi-retired with stacks of money that they can afford to lose, and they're still not allowed to put it in. It's because these guys are coming up with different parameters of saying, oh, well, we need an income that you, but these guys have made their income and they don't need a solid income anymore. But and yet they're still not allowed. They're no danger to anyone or any part of society or anything like that. But they're just these rules that they come in make it unplayable for them. So eventually they just sidle off and say, look, I could be interested. I'm not interested in having putting 500 quid into an account for a month and playing away in tenors and scores. I'd rather have no bet. So just sack that off and close the account. And I lost to the game, definitely to the legitimate side of legitimate bookmakers anyway. Like the black market is, I would have said now. I read the other day 9%. I'd say now that was a gross underestimate what is actually happening now myself, because I would say anyone betting in any sort of units now is either betting black market in some shape or form or packing it in.
Now, but also, I imagine if you went to a black market bookmaker, they'd be like, "Leave me out, Johnny," wouldn't they? I mean, you wouldn't even get on with them either, would you?
Um, but you know, I I actually got my bookmaker's license out again the other day. Can jump on back into the other side of the fence, and maybe the value is swinging towards being a layer now. You know what I mean? Like being a legitimate layer as such. So the black market is like is there are for this like dealing in the black market. Well, what do I suppose you'd call it black market? Like if somebody lays me a bet, like, and if they can move it around and have it on with someone else, is that the black market? He's probably having it on with some people that isn't in the black market, but he can make that money work for himself if he wants to. Like, if I do hit a winner, I'm probably not costing him money. I'm not costing him any money, but he can use the money to move around and see what happens in that market, and maybe he could have money for other horses, whatever. But look, I wouldn't consider it really black market. So, but the problem is as well is that some of them, like these firms, there's no honor of any description nowadays. You know what I mean? And the black market bookies, who are supposed to be the guys with the shady guys with no honor, will probably pay you, whereas the other guys are looking for excuses not to.
Is it worth somebody in their 20s striving to become like a form judge and emulate you now?
I would have said, I would have said if you could make, if you had the know-how and the brain to make this game pay, you'd make a lot more, a hell of a lot more. If you had the know-how and maybe the brain capacity to operate, because being a farm judge and actually make it, like if I had to start from scratch, no, I couldn't make it pay anyway. I know that much. I wouldn't make it pay. I wouldn't make it. I wouldn't have it anyway because you need the context, people that you can speak to. You need to serve your apprenticeship too. You need to been down the hole a few times and know what it's like. Do you know? You need to have the scars from losing. That's the best way to teach you about winning and losing and what to do and what not to do. And maybe sometimes take your time and other times. So I mean, I was probably 10 years probably trying to figure it out before I got any good at it. So I wouldn't be advising. I wouldn't be advising anyone to do it like starting off in this game now. I wouldn't. I'd say that there is little edges and there is little openings, but whether you'd make enough of money like to have a decent lifestyle, I wouldn't be so sure. I wouldn't like if my own kids went at it, and I put it that way to you.
Okay, final question, John. If somebody is determined, what would be the one bit of advice if they really are going to say, "No, I'm going to do this"? What would be your bit of advice to them?
Well,
Apart
most
from don't.
most kids nowadays are so much like better like technically than somebody like me. Do you know what I mean? Like basically, like I can put on the kettle. That'd be it. You know what I mean? Like I can hardly turn on the computer. I mean, so look, um, I suppose there's probably openings in these. No, I wouldn't be interested in like tipping lines and them kind of things, or maybe facilitating with bets and getting small bits off a lot of people. That's what way the bookies want to work nowadays too. That they're much happier to be getting fivers and tenors off of thousands and thousands of people rather than playing interested in having one or two or five or 10 grand on horses. You know what I mean? They ain't interested in those lads anymore. So if you could come up with a system or something like that, or maybe that you could get an earner, say, whatever, for the subscribers, that if you can get enough of them and you can doing whatever you're doing, maybe it's a tipping horses or coming up with some sort of maybe a plan to make money or whatever it could be. I don't even know what I'm really referring to but it probably can be done. But because the internet is so wide that you're dealing with the world, you're dealing with the you've the world is your a bookie at the races has only like more or less the guys standing in front of him if he doesn't want to play the exchange all the time. And like there is no future in a bookie going to the races and just solely playing the exchange. I mean that's what I used to do at the finish was and I know it mad. And even though I used to do it, I knew deep down, but I was only going 4 or 5 days a year, so we used to try and like just take our chances and hopefully they would come right. But if you were doing that every day, you couldn't last anyway. So, but I do think that there may well be an opening for a fella that's savvy and comes up with an idea. I mean, somebody somewhere is probably clever enough to come up with an idea to make money. But I think that it's the little and all way to probably make money for young guys now. You know what I mean? Rather than like no high street bookmaker or underground bookmaker or whatever is going to leave a fella take his pants down on a continual basis nowadays. You know what I mean? It's almost one strike and you're out, and you mightn't even need to back a winner if you back Arsenal. I mean, if you open an account and back Arsenal 3-1 and goes off 11 days on, that's it, isn't it? Win or lose. You know what I mean? It's so. I would say that maybe in that side of things that if you can get into maybe a non-risk business or what tipping or whatever, some sort of a tipping. I couldn't even say what you could get into, but there might be an avenue for that. But you'd have to come up with something good because there's a lot of fellas doing that already, and there's a lot of guys like looking for that market, and probably some guys are good, some guys aren't, whatever. But you'd have to be exceptional at what you do to make inroads on the racing game because a lot of things are probably played out and I mean there's probably somebody somewhere clever enough to think of something. There always is at the same time. You know what I mean? When nobody, even though it's a very simple concept, but no one ever thought of it until those people did actually think of it. So look, I wouldn't be dismissing it, but it's definitely not going to be easy.
Okay. All right, John. Well, thank you very much for your time. Good luck going forward. Hope the losers run ins with the jumping,
Sure, yeah, exactly. It's
and
only a small thing anyway. I wouldn't be too worried
and
about that.
maybe we see you back on the turf then, and betting under your own name when they get your license back.
Yeah, no, well, maybe not the horses, but I'm actually thinking of going to the dogs, starting at the dogs. And it's not too far away from where I go, and just to get out of the house even for one night anyway. And I actually like the dogs. No, I'm far from an expert on it, but I'd imagine if I was going up there every week, I have some idea what I'd be talking after a while anyway. Do you know that kind of way? So, but I'd have to get a bit of a, I'd have to do a bit of homework now before I go, to be honest.
And where's that?
Cork.
Excellent. Okay, right. Look out for your Cork dog track. I'm sure the punters are rubbing their hands together.
I hope not.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure as always to talk to you.
Okay. All the best, Simon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Hello everyone, just a quick one. If you have enjoyed these videos and are enjoying these videos, can you please like and subscribe to my channel? Thanks very much.